So what I wanted to do in this video is I want to have a look at consent forms and how people are populating their consent forms, because I think common misconception is that if you've taken client consent that you are insured. Now, although this might be the case, there are a couple of things in the industry, for example, about insurance and what you need to know to make sure you are fully compliant, and that if a claim does come against you, you have all the right tools necessary to remain compliant and are following a consent form through properly in order to stay as well protected for both you as a business, your practitioners that might fall with under that umbrella company as a business, but also how to protect your client as well. At the end of the day, this is a professional business that you want to make sure that everybody who is involved in that transaction and that procedure is safe, from the injector to the patient. So if I come through to the consent forms, you can see we've had over 4 million consent forms that have been populated through Faces over the past 3 years, which is a massive number of people who are having aesthetic treatments. So I think it's important that we know we get this right. If I come into the data and I start filtering the data over the past week, so I can use the data from, let's do the last week of February. So let's just click in. Okay, so to give you an idea now of the data that we have in February, you can see that we have the total number of appointments that were requested. This is the red line here that is coming up. What's interesting is most people request an appointment on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and yet actually that is the time where you guys do the least amount of appointments. You actually do no appointments hardly on Saturday and Sunday. It looks like we all want to be working that Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So a little tip, if you are a business owner, start working Saturdays and Sunday. Your clients want it. It gives you an opportunity to bump up them sales. And if you're working when nobody else is working, it means you're making that extra money. I think this is a massive opportunity that people are missing. You've got there, I think it's 6,000 people on a Sunday would rather have appointments, and 7,000 people on a Saturday would rather have appointments that we're missing out on. So it's definitely something that we need to be looking at as a business if we want to be stepping above a competition in that industry. Also looking at it, you can see our total consent forms is in blue, and below the total number of consent forms, I want you to see how many appointments have been created. Sorry, the data is slightly off there. That is the total number of appointments that have been created. And in the orange is the number of consent forms that were added to that appointment. So you can see from the number of consent forms you've probably got there, I think it is 98% of people are adding a consent form to their appointment. From there, you've got your aftercare. Now, your aftercare is only hitting, I think, 88% of people are adding aftercare to their appointments. So if you're having a treatment, in order to be as compliant as you can with insurance, you need to make sure your consent form and aftercare form is added. In fact, when you're speaking to some of the insurance companies like Instinct Insurance, Alan Fraser, they want to make sure that you have consent and aftercare both added. So this margin of people of like 10% of people who are choosing not to add an aftercare form to their booking means that they're at risk of, if a claim was to come in, of not being insured and not being fully compliant. As we move into the before photos, you can see actually quite a large percentage of people, in fact about 76% of people who are creating an appointment are adding the before photos to the appointment form and the consent form, which again is quite concerning, because that means about 25% of people aren't adding before photos to the consent form, which runs in the risk of not being compliant, because ultimately if a claim was to come in, the first thing insurance are going to know, is this what she looked like, or is this what he looked like before they came in to have the procedure done? And if you have got no evidence to show the before photo against the after photo, then you're at risk of that claim not working in your favor and actually being a long, painful process, which actually might involve court cases and more lawyers as the case opens up and goes on for a longer period of time. More concerningly, from here though, you have the after photos, which is this line here. So on the after photos, you've actually got 61% of all appointments, people are actually completing their after photos. Now the after photos, if you've done the before photo, why haven't you done the after photo? Now, when we speak to a lot of the practitioners, they're telling me that they have done the before photo, they have done their after photo, but it's on their phone. Unfortunately, that is not compliant. You must upload them to your appointment form and delete the images off your phone. The reason why we do that is our data is encrypted, GDPR protected, it's HIPAA compliant for the American states, and it's DHRA going through its process so that it can be compliant in UAE as well. It is so important that them images do not remain on your phone. If you've got consent to use them for marketing, that's fine. But if you are using them purely for the insurance and compliance-based features, then you must not have them on your phone. They must be stored on our system and deleted from your phone. Another 15% of people, after they've taken their before photo, chose not to upload the after photos. I think is lazy, or they might be complacently going about the treatment and forgetting to add before and after photos to the consent form. Coming down onto facial mapping, actually considerably 7% of people on average are doing their facial mapping treatments, which means just over half the amount of people who are doing any type of treatment or consent, they're the only ones who are actually putting in where they injected, how much they injected in a person's face or on the body for body mapping. So actually quite a low number of people. Now, this is great data for you as a practitioner. So if you are doing your facial mapping, you can see the results, the before and the after, and see how successful that treatment may have been, whether you should actually use more or less of a product, whether you need to change your injection style or technique for the second treatment when that person comes back in. So facial mapping, although it is actually part of the compliance, so that if there is a complication, you can see where you've injected, how much you injected, so that actually other professionals who might be able to help in a complication can support that. But also from an aesthetics point of view, what great data to see what works and what doesn't when injecting your cheek patient with a toxin or with dermal fillers. At the end of the day, we want to get the best results possible, and we want to learn from that. So this type of data should be your bread and butter for improving as a practitioner. Coming down into the batch numbers, this is really quite poor. You actually only have about 23% of people who are putting in their batch numbers as an average, which means the ingredients and the products that you are using will come with a batch number, and they aren't being uploaded into your consent forms or your data of the appointment form. If there is product or stock that needs to be recalled, they will rely on the batch numbers to help do this. If your patient, for example, has a reaction, maybe the compound hasn't been made up correctly, batch number will help tell that, because it's not only you and your patient who suffers, it's actually everybody else who receives a product from that particular batch. The batch numbers are there to help protect you, protect your client, and provide valuable information and data to the manufacturers should there have been like a complication or whilst manufacturing. So actually, guys, if you are using faces, you need to be adding your batch number. It is a great way to remain protected. And also when it comes down to the insurance or an insurance claim, at the end of the day, if you can go to your insurance, here is a time-stamped consent form from Faces where you've added the consent, you've added the aftercare form, you've got before and after images, you've shown facial mapping of where you've injected, how much you've injected, and you have the products that you've used and the batch numbers attached. This means that when it comes to compliant or a case being opened, actually you are there and being well protected, and it gives the insurance companies and any legal team no reason to invalidate your insurance. What you don't want is to give any party a reason to question your professionalism whilst doing these aesthetics. Granted that some treatments come with a higher risk than others, but for pure safety and compliance, please use the form correctly and use the features that we provided so that you can act compliantly and safely. I hope this video helps.